people sing and people dance. These are my favorite musicals of all time. Wow, that's a terrible intro. My number 5 favorite musical of all time is West Side Story, which is a musical adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. It follows that plotline very closely, but it puts a kind of gangster spin, and it has a lot of crime aspects in it as well. No, not the DiCaprio movie. This is another movie, and it's really impressive how this movie has so many people dancing at the same time. Just the scope of the musical sequences in this movie is amazing and truly mind-blowing. You really have to watch it yourself to believe it. It's hard to describe, but if I had to put it into words, it would be just perfect synchronization from a huge group of people who are immensely talented. The synchronization in this movie is just fantastic. Every single action that they do, as subtle as some of the actions are always in synchronization with the music perfectly. Each of their movements and the way that they bounce off each other and their interactions are always perfectly synchronized with the beat that's going on in the background. It is not just incredibly satisfying to watch, but also really impressive when you just think about how hard it is to pull something like this off. And Robert Wise as the director did a great job by putting the energy of a musical stage play onto the big screen. So when you watch this movie, it's impressive and energetic and just ultimately really satisfying to see all these human beings doing these fantastic dancing sequences with a huge scope and pitch perfect synchronization. Number 4 is Funny Face. This movie stars two really talented people that I never guessed would be great together, but they are. They are Fred Astaire and Audrey Hepburn. Now let's talk about Audrey Hepburn first. She is my favorite actress of all time, and I know a lot of her work. I'm pretty familiar with her acting style, but during her lifetime we did not get a lot of chances to see her show off her dancing skills. After all, this is somebody with a background in ballet, so she can dance. It's just that not a lot of movies give her the opportunity to show that part of her. But this movie does. You get a lot of dancing sequences with varying styles, and Audrey Hepburn is in a lot of them. And she does a lot of the dancing herself. So you really can see it's her doing the dancing. You can see her face when she's dancing. And it's fantastic when you see scenes like that, when the actor or actress is doing the stunts themselves, not requiring a stunt double. And Fred Astaire, as we all know, greatest musical star that has ever lived. None that came after him or before him could ever excel him in what he does. And he's just the greatest musical star of all time. So to see him paired up with somebody like Audrey Hepburn is just a fantastic thing. And number 3 is Enchanted. This movie stars Amy Adams, and she plays a Disney princess in real life in this movie. And the thing about playing a Disney princess is it's a lot easier said than done. Much like acting. Acting is really easy when you just want to talk about it, but when you actually act yourself, it's actually very difficult. But in truth, it's really hard, because not only do you have to play a good Disney princess that's accurate to the source material, but also do it with sincerity and not a sense of cynicism in your bones, which is really hard to do since we are all modern people living in a city. It's hard to not have at least a hint of sarcasm or cynicism in our body. But Amy Adams does such a great performance as this Disney princess in real life, and she does it in a very earnest and sincere way. It never seems like she's making fun of it. It never seems like she's really self-aware of it. She just does it with the most sincere way possible, and it's really impressive. And it's also the central of this really self-aware movie that examines all the Disney tropes that we have grown to become used to. And the movie takes place in New York City, and it really imagines what would happen if a Disney story was set in New York City with princesses, witches, all of those stuff, but all happening in New York City, and it has a lot of really funny moments where it really plays off this idea of a fish out of water story. And Amy Adams is just the best thing ever in this movie. It's still to date the best Amy Adams performance yet, which says a lot because Amy Adams is a really good actress. And number 2 is Once. Once is a very different type of movie as compared to a lot of the other musicals that I mentioned earlier, because I don't even know if I should call it a musical, because it's very loosely a musical if the definition of a musical is that the music has to push the story forward. I don't know if this movie necessarily fits the bill, but it's a good movie nevertheless, because this movie is just so different. It's really raw and realistic and unfiltered in the sense that it shows this really harsh world that we live in. It doesn't show the world through rosy colored glasses. It shows the world just the way that it is. And it shows people who are struggling to find a place in this world, and those people finding a connection with each other. It's about a connection between two souls, and it does so in a very genuine way. It doesn't feel like the movie is trying to play with your emotions. It just feels like the movie is just showing everything the way that it is. It's like a fly on the wall filmmaking. It's like it's just showing the perspective of these two people connecting, like in a very documentary fashion. And I really like that whole raw aspect of this movie, but I also really like the soundtrack. The soundtrack was sung by 2 of the main leads in this movie, so not only are they actors, but they also sang the theme song and a lot of the other music for this movie. And if you like indie folk music, you'll probably like the music in this movie too. But even if you don't, I still urge you to give it a try. You could just search online now, just search on YouTube. Search Falling Slowly. I think it's one of the greatest songs ever written in any movie or album, and you should just give that song a listen, even if you haven't seen the movie yet. And number 1 is Mary Poppins. Not just my favorite musical of all time, but my favorite movie of all time as well. It has so many magical sequences in it, and I'm not just talking about the parts that have music in it, but also the parts where maybe Mary Poppins is just having a conversation with the kids. Those parts are really magical too. But of course, it's really the musical sequences that rank this movie as high on my list as it is right now, because those musical sequences are just filled with so much Disney magic. And it's not the same that I can say for any other movie out there. Some movies have a feeling of magic in the air, but they don't have that to the same extent as Mary Poppins has. Mary Poppins has that feeling of magic and wonder in every single scene. Every single frame of this movie is just filled with magic, and you're really always anticipating what kind of magic is going to pop up in the next scene and what kind of magic is just brewing under the surface. Julie Andrews does a really good job playing Mary Poppins because it's a very difficult role to play, and I like Emily Blunt, but I don't think she did a good job playing Mary Poppins in the new Mary Poppins movie. She just seemed like kind of a jerk in the new movie, but Julie Andrews plays all of the different conflicting personalities of Mary Poppins very well in this movie. Because the thing about Mary Poppins is she has many conflicting personalities. She's not just one personality the whole way through. She shifts very quickly, and that's why it's really hard to play a role like this. But Julie Andrews does it really well, and Dick Van Dyke in this movie also plays off Mary Poppins' character really well, and both of these actors really show off their talents in this movie because they can sing, they can dance, they can act. They are the triple threat of Hollywood by every sense of the word, and they really show off what they are capable of in this movie. So those are my favorite musicals of all time.